The Devourer main fleet emerged from dark space at exactly 12 locations simultaneously, in the largest coordinated assault the galaxy had ever witnessed. Commander Jake Harrison watched the tactical displays from his command position aboard the orbital defense platform as enemy forces appeared at Arcturus Prime and 11 other critical council worlds. Each Devourer fleet was massive beyond previous estimates, containing hundreds of ships built from the absorbed technology of countless conquered civilizations. The enemy had been preparing for this moment for years, and their coordination was perfect in every detail except one. They had not expected human commanders to ignore all conventional wisdom about defensive strategy. All human protector units execute scatter protocol immediately. Jake broadcast to forces throughout the galaxy. Ignore formation doctrine and respond to local conditions using independent judgment. Make every battle different from every other battle. Colonel Nina Foster commanded the defense of the industrial world Kepler Prime, where Devourer forces had expected to find traditional defensive lines protecting key facilities. Instead, they encountered human-led forces that had abandoned fixed positions in favor of mobile warfare that made no logical sense. Enemy forces are trying to predict our movement patterns, Nina reported as her mixed alien units conducted hit-and-run attacks against superior numbers. Every time they adapt to our tactics, we change to something completely different. Dr. Lisa Monroe made a crucial discovery while analyzing enemy command signals from her laboratory aboard Arcturus Prime. The dark space entities that controlled the Devourers existed partially outside normal spacetime and were vulnerable to quantum uncertainty effects that human consciousness naturally generated. Jake, the entities cannot properly process human thought patterns because our minds operate on quantum mechanical principles. Lisa explained during a brief communication window between attacks. Our unpredictability creates interference with their control systems. This revelation changed everything about how human forces approached the battle. Instead of simply being unpredictable, they began actively focusing their consciousness on chaotic thought patterns that would disrupt enemy coordination. The effect was immediately noticeable as Devourer formations began losing cohesion. Captain Ryan Blake led ground forces on the frontier world New Terra, where enemy landing craft had deployed thousands of corrupted beings that had once been protectors from previous galactic cycles. The psychological impact of fighting former heroes was devastating to traditional forces, but humans approached it differently. These were good people once, Blake told his troops as they prepared for the most difficult battle of their lives. We fight to free them, not to destroy them. Remember that when you pull the trigger. Blake's forces used non-lethal weapons whenever possible and focused on disabling enemy communication equipment rather than eliminating the corrupted beings entirely. This approach confused the dark space entities who had expected humans to respond with maximum violence. Major Kate Sullivan coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations from threatened worlds while simultaneously directing defensive operations that made no sense to enemy tactical analysis systems. Her forces would appear to retreat, then suddenly attack from directions that should have been impossible. The key is to never do what they expect, Kate explained to her Vorthak and Nexari allies. If retreat makes sense, then we attack. If attack is logical, then we defend. Always choose the option that seems wrong. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had developed new battle formations that integrated human unpredictability with alien strengths in ways that created exponential increases in effectiveness. Vorthak honor and Nexari logic became powerful weapons when combined with human creativity. Young Corthran led his Vorthak warriors in boarding actions against Devourer ships where they encountered corrupted members of their own species. The psychological warfare was intense, but Corthran had learned from human example that honor could be flexible when lives were at stake. We fight to restore honor to our fallen brothers, Corthran declared as his forces used human tactical methods combined with Vorthak strength. There is no shame in unconventional warfare when the enemy has abandoned all honor. The tide of battle began turning when human commanders started making decisions that defied all military logic, but achieved impossible results. Sergeant Alex Carter turned a losing ground battle by ordering his forces to retreat in a pattern that spelled out ancient human poetry in an alien language. The cognitive dissonance created by this action caused multiple Devourer tactical systems to crash simultaneously as their analysis programs tried to understand why enemy forces would waste time on art during combat. The brief confusion allowed Council reinforcements to arrive and stabilize the situation. Dr. Monroe's research revealed that the dark space entities were fundamentally unable to comprehend concepts like mercy, compassion, and artistic expression. These uniquely human traits created chaos in their control systems that could be exploited strategically. They understand logic, and they understand violence, but they cannot process love or creativity, Lisa reported to Jake during the height of the battle. Those are our secret weapons. Jake made the most important decision of the war when enemy forces finally breached the defenses of Arcturus Prime and reached the council chambers where civilian refugees were taking shelter. Traditional military doctrine would call for a fighting withdrawal to preserve forces for future battles. Instead, Jake ordered all human units to advance directly into the enemy stronghold regardless of casualties. But his attack was not designed to destroy the Devourer command structure. It was intended to offer something the dark space entities had never encountered before. This is Commander Jake Harrison of the Human Protector Corps. Jake broadcast on all frequencies as his forces fought their way through enemy positions. We offer you redemption instead of destruction. You were heroes once, and you can be heroes again. The offer of mercy to beings that had shown none created a cascade failure in the dark space entity's control matrix. Compassion was a variable they had never calculated and could not understand. Their perfect order began collapsing as corrupted protectors started remembering who they had been before their fall. Captain Blake reached the enemy flagship just as Jake's message was having its maximum effect. The dark space entity controlling the Devourer fleet was weakening as its hold over corrupted minds began to slip. Blake had a choice between destroying the creature or attempting to save it. You could have been great, Blake said to the writhing shadow that had once been a protector commander. But greatness requires choice, and you chose control over freedom. Blake's decision to spare the creature while denying its philosophy created the final disruption needed to break the entity's power completely. Across 12 star systems, Devourer forces began shutting down as their dark space controllers lost the ability to maintain control. The war ended not with a massive explosion or final battle, but with millions of corrupted beings suddenly remembering who they had been before the darkness took them. Many died as their tortured forms could no longer sustain life, but others began the slow process of healing and redemption. Jake stood in the ruins of the council chambers, surrounded by former enemies who were now looking to humanity for guidance. The victory had been won through the power of chaos and creativity over rigid order and control. The galaxy is free, Jake announced as reports of liberation came in from all 12 battlefields. But freedom means responsibility. We must rebuild in a way that prevents this from happening again. Dr. Monroe established new protocols for detecting and preventing future dark space incursions while working with surviving Devourers to understand how the corruption had spread so completely. The research would take years, but it was essential for long-term galactic security. The Council was restructured with human principles of individual liberty and collective responsibility, replacing the old system of rigid hierarchy and predictable order. Every species would have a voice in decisions that affected their future. Colonel Foster oversaw the establishment of new Protector Corps training programs that emphasized adaptability and creative thinking over traditional military discipline. The goal was to create defenders who could face any threat without losing their essential humanity. Young Corthron became the first non-human to complete human tactical training and return to his people as an ambassador for new ways of thinking. The rigid honor codes of the Vorthak began evolving to include concepts of flexible morality and situational ethics. Major Sullivan coordinated relief efforts for worlds damaged during the war, while also planning defensive systems that would protect against future threats. The new defenses relied on unpredictability and rapid adaptation rather than static fortifications. Captain Blake established programs to help former Devourers integrate into galactic society as productive citizens rather than threats to be contained. The process was difficult, but necessary for true healing to occur. The story concluded with Jake watching children from dozens of different species playing together in parks on rebuilt worlds. Their games were chaotic and wonderful and utterly unpredictable, which was exactly how it should be. News of the victory at Corvin 7 spread across Council space faster than Jake Harrison had expected. Some species celebrated humanity's success, while others feared what human methods might mean for traditional ways of warfare. The Galactic Council called for an emergency session to discuss the future of human involvement in the Protector Corps. High Arbiter Veltar presided over the tribunal with obvious displeasure written across his pale features. The ancient Nexari leader had served the Council for over 2 centuries and believed strongly in order and predictability. Human chaos disturbed him more than the Devourer threat itself. The human protectors achieved victory through methods that violate every principle of civilized warfare, Veltar announced to the assembled delegates. They must submit to behavioral modification programs to make their actions more predictable and controllable. Commander Jake Harrison stood before the tribunal knowing that his response would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Monroe had prepared detailed evidence showing why behavioral modification would eliminate the very qualities that made humans effective against the Devourers. High Arbiter, the unpredictability you want to remove is exactly what saved 10 million lives at Corvin 7, Jake argued. Traditional methods failed against the Devourers because they could adapt to logical patterns and honor-based tactics. Colonel Nina Foster watched the proceedings from the observation gallery while coordinating security for the human delegation. She had noticed unusual movement patterns among Council security forces and suspected that some members were planning to eliminate the human threat permanently. Meanwhile, Major Kate Sullivan was investigating reports of missing human personnel from various Council facilities. Several soldiers who had volunteered for special assignments had disappeared without explanation. Kate's investigation led her to a classified research station in the Outer Rim territories. The facility was officially listed as a xenobiology research center, but Kate's reconnaissance revealed something much more sinister. Council scientists were attempting to replicate human unpredictability through genetic manipulation and psychological conditioning of volunteer subjects from other species. "What they are doing here is horrific," Kate reported to Jake during a secure communication session. "They are trying to create artificial humans by breaking the minds of other species. The failure rate is almost 100%. Captain Ryan, Blake led a covert team to investigate the research facility, while the tribunal continued on Arcturus Prime. What they found confirmed Kate's worst fears. Dozens of alien volunteers had been subjected to experimental procedures designed to induce human-like thinking patterns. The results were uniformly disastrous. Nexari subjects who underwent the process lost their logical reasoning abilities but gained none of human creativity. Vorthak warriors became confused and unable to function in their honor-based society. Most subjects suffered complete psychological breakdown within days of treatment. They are trying to mass-produce human thinking without understanding what makes us who we are, Blake told his team as they documented the evidence. "This is not science, it is butchery disguised as research." Dr. Monroe made her own disturbing discovery while analyzing Devourer attack patterns from her position at the tribunal. The enemy was not conducting random raids as previously believed, but following a carefully planned strategy to test Council defenses before launching a coordinated assault. "Jake, look at these battle reports," Lisa whispered urgently during a break in the proceedings. "Every Devourer attack in the last 6 months has been gathering intelligence about our response capabilities. They are preparing for something much larger." Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez had been monitoring enemy communications from his position aboard the orbital defense platform. His analysis revealed that Devourer forces were massing in dark space beyond the galactic rim for what appeared to be a massive coordinated strike. The scope of the planned attack became clear when Sam cross-referenced enemy movement patterns with Council star charts. 12 key worlds, including Arcturus Prime itself, were being targeted simultaneously. The Devourers intended to decapitate galactic civilization in a single, overwhelming assault. Young Vorthak warrior Korthrun had been assigned as liaison between human and alien protector forces during the tribunal proceedings. He overheard conversations between certain council members that revealed a conspiracy more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Some of our own leaders have been negotiating with the Devourers," Korthrun reported to Blake during a secret meeting. "They believe surrender terms can be arranged that will preserve their power and position." The conspiracy involved high-ranking officials from several member species who viewed the Devourer offer of perfect order as preferable to the chaos that humans represented. They were working to undermine human effectiveness and prepare the way for negotiated surrender. Blake immediately contacted Jake with this information, but the tribunal session was being monitored too closely for secure communication. Instead, he had to rely on coded messages that would hopefully reach Jake before the conspirators could act. The situation reached a crisis point when High Arbiter Veltar announced his final decision regarding human membership in the Protector Corps. The behavioral modification program would be mandatory for all human personnel, or they would be expelled from Council space entirely. The choice is simple, Veltar declared. Humans must conform to civilized standards or remove themselves from our protection. We will not allow chaos to destroy the order we have maintained for millennia. Jake stood to respond, but was interrupted by the arrival of urgent battle reports. Devourer scout fleets had been detected at the edge of 12 different star systems, including the current location of the Council Tribunal. The massive coordinated attack was beginning ahead of schedule. High Arbiter, we can debate human methods later, Jake said firmly. Right now the Devourers are moving to destroy everything we are supposed to protect. Do you want to argue about order while civilians die? Veltar hesitated for a crucial moment before authorizing emergency protocols. The tribunal was suspended, and all available forces were scrambled to defend the targeted worlds. But Jake knew that traditional protector methods would fail against an enemy that had learned to counter them. The conspiracy was exposed during the emergency mobilization when several council officials attempted to broadcast surrender terms to the approaching Devourer fleets. Security forces loyal to the legitimate government moved to arrest the traitors, but fighting broke out in the council chambers. Human protectors found themselves defending the very institution that had been trying to eliminate them. Jake led his forces against council security troops who were following orders from compromised leadership, while Devourer fleets approached their final attack positions. This is exactly what the enemy wanted, Jake realized as he fought to protect council members who still opposed human methods. They used our own political divisions against us, just like they adapted to our military tactics. The battle within Arcturus Prime lasted several hours, with human forces gradually gaining control over the situation. But valuable time had been lost while the real enemy moved closer to their targets throughout the galaxy. Colonel Foster coordinated the defense of the station's critical systems, while Jake worked to convince remaining council members that only immediate action could save their civilization. Traditional diplomatic procedures would have to be abandoned in favor of emergency measures. We need to authorize human tactical doctrine for all protector forces, Jake argued as explosions shook the council chambers. Conventional methods will not work against an enemy that has learned to counter them. Major Sullivan arrived with Blake's team and evidence of the secret research facility, just as the last conspirators were being arrested. The documentation of failed experiments proved that human consciousness could not be artificially replicated or controlled. This shows why behavioral modification will not work, Sullivan explained to the surviving council members. You cannot create human unpredictability through programming, because it comes from something deeper than conscious thought. Dr. Monroe analyzed the approaching Devourer fleet composition and realized that the enemy had made one crucial mistake in their planning. They had prepared to counter human methods as they understood them, but humans were capable of evolving beyond their previous tactics. They learned to fight the humans from Corvin 7, Lisa explained. But we are not the same humans who fought that battle. We have learned and adapted too. The emergency session of the Council reached its conclusion as Devourer fleets entered attack range of their primary targets. High Arbiter Veltar had been wounded during the fighting, but he managed to issue the authorization that Jake needed. Human tactical doctrine is approved for all protector forces, Veltar announced weakly. May your chaos prove more effective than our order. Jake immediately began coordinating the defense of 12 worlds simultaneously using methods that no traditional military commander would attempt. Each battle would be different because each human commander would respond to local conditions in their own unpredictable way. This is our moment, Jake told his officers as they prepared to face the largest enemy assault in galactic history. The emergency alert reached Jake Harrison while he was still celebrating the completion of trials with his team. 3 Devourer fleets had been detected moving toward Corvin 7, where over 10 million refugees from destroyed worlds were seeking shelter. The industrial planet was not heavily defended and would fall quickly without help. "We deploy in 4 hours," Jake announced to his newly formed protector unit. "This is what we trained for, but remember that real combat is different from any simulation." Colonel Nina Foster began organizing their forces immediately. They had been given command of 3 human ships, including the UES Valor and UES Guardian, along with supporting vessels from Vorthak and Nexari fleets. It was the first time in Council history that humans would lead a mixed alien force into battle. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez worked frantically at his tactical station, designing battle formations that had never been attempted before. Traditional protector doctrine called for organized defensive lines and coordinated attacks, but Sam ignored everything he had been taught. "Sir, I recommend we split our forces into small independent groups," Sam explained to Jake as they prepared for departure. "If we fight like a swarm instead of an army, the Devourers will have trouble adapting to our strategy." Dr. Lisa Monroe studied intelligence reports about the enemy forces while the fleet moved toward Corvin 7. The Devourer ships were unlike anything in Council databases. They appeared to be combinations of technology from multiple civilizations that had been consumed and repurposed. "Look at this hull design," Lisa pointed out to her alien colleagues. "That section came from the Kelthak Empire that was destroyed 5 years ago. Those weapon systems are Nexari technology but modified in ways that should be impossible." The journey to Corvin 7 took 18 hours, and Jake used that time to coordinate with planetary defense forces. Major Kate Sullivan had been put in command of ground operations and was already organizing evacuation procedures for the civilian population. "We have maybe 6 hours before the refugees can be moved to safer locations," Kate reported from the planet's surface. "The local defense grid is outdated and will not hold against a major assault." Captain Ryan Blake studied the approaching Devourer fleet through long-range sensors. 3 massive battleships led the attack force with dozens of smaller vessels providing support. The enemy formation looked traditional, but Jake suspected there were surprises waiting for them. "Something feels wrong about this," Ryan said as he analyzed the tactical display. "They are approaching too directly for an enemy that is supposed to be unpredictable." Young Vorthak warrior Corthran had joined the human fleet as a liaison officer. He was fascinated by human tactical methods and wanted to learn more about their unconventional approach to warfare. His presence also helped convince other Vorthak crews to follow human commands. "In Vorthak tradition, we would form defensive positions around the planet and fight with honor until victory or death," Corthran explained to Blake. "What will humans do instead?" "We will do whatever works," Blake replied. "Honor means nothing if civilians die because we followed rules instead of thinking." The Devourer fleet arrived at Corvin 7 exactly when intelligence reports predicted. They moved into standard attack formation and began targeting the planet's orbital facilities, just as any normal enemy would do. But Jake knew this was exactly what they wanted the protectors to expect. "All ships scatter on my command," Jake ordered as the enemy approached weapon range. "Ignore formation doctrine and attack independently. Make them chase individual targets instead of fighting one organized fleet." The human ships broke formation and scattered in different directions while Vorthak and Nexari vessels followed their example. The Devourer fleet immediately adapted by splitting into smaller groups to pursue each target, but this was exactly what Jake had hoped for. Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated the scattered attack using tactics that made no logical sense to alien observers. Human ships would appear to retreat, then suddenly reverse course and attack from unexpected angles. The pattern was so chaotic that even friendly forces could not predict what would happen next. "UES Guardian, this is Rodriguez," Sam called over the communication system. "Execute Maneuver 7, then immediately switch to Maneuver 15 without completing the sequence." The Guardian's captain followed orders without question, even though the combination made no tactical sense. His ship dove toward the planet's surface, then suddenly climbed and fired all weapons at a Devourer cruiser that had been chasing a different target entirely. The enemy fleet began showing signs of confusion as their adaptive systems struggled to counter human unpredictability. Devourer ships that had learned to counter Vorthak honor tactics and Nixari logic found themselves unable to predict what humans would do next. Dr. Monroe monitored enemy communications from her position aboard the flagship. The Devourer signals were becoming increasingly frantic as their command systems tried to process human battle patterns and failed repeatedly. "Jake, they are having trouble with our randomness," Lisa reported. "Their adaptation algorithms are designed to learn from logical patterns, but we are not giving them any patterns to analyze." Major Sullivan coordinated ground defenses while the space battle raged overhead. Devourer landing craft had reached the planet's surface, but they were using standard assault tactics that human forces could counter effectively. "They expected us to fight like traditional protectors," Kate explained as her troops used guerrilla warfare methods against alien invaders. "Instead, they get human ingenuity and creativity." The tide of battle turned when Captain Blake led a boarding assault against the largest Devourer battleship. His team used equipment and tactics that no protector force had ever attempted, including improvised weapons made from ship components. Blake's squad fought their way through corridors filled with absorbed technology from dozens of conquered civilizations. The ship's interior was a nightmare combination of different architectural styles and defensive systems that should not have been able to work together. "This place makes no sense," Sergeant Alex Carter muttered as they navigated through rooms that seemed to change configuration while they watched. "How do the crew know where anything is located?" They found their answer when they reached the ship's command center. The Devourer leadership was not what anyone had expected to encounter. Instead of alien monsters, they found beings that had once been protectors themselves but were now corrupted beyond recognition. "We were like you once," the enemy commander spoke in a voice that contained traces of multiple languages. "We sought to protect the galaxy but learned that protection requires control. Order must replace chaos." Blake realized with horror that the Devourers were not invaders from outside the galaxy, but the twisted remains of an ancient protector corps from a previous age. They had been exposed to something in dark space that convinced them the only way to save civilization was to absorb and control it completely. "You do not understand what you are fighting," the corrupted being continued. "The chaos in human minds will destroy everything if it is not contained. We offer perfect order and eternal peace." Blake rejected this offer by shooting the creature with every weapon his squad carried. The command ship began losing power and coordination, as its leadership was eliminated but not before transmitting detailed information about human tactics to the main Devourer fleet. The battle for Corvin 7 ended in victory for the Protector forces, but the cost was higher than anyone expected. The enemy had been defeated, but they had learned valuable information about human methods that would make future encounters more dangerous. "We won this time because they did not expect us," Jake told his officers as they regrouped after the battle. "Next time they will be ready for human unpredictability, and we will need to find new ways to surprise them." Dr. Monroe's analysis of captured Devourer technology revealed disturbing information about the enemy's true nature and capabilities. They were not just adaptive, they were actively evolving with each encounter to become more effective against whatever they faced. "The next attack will be different," Lisa warned. "They are learning to counter our methods, just like they learned to counter Vorthak honor and Nexari logic. We have to stay ahead of their adaptation process." The victory at Corvin 7 made humanity famous throughout Council space, but also marked them as a primary target for Devourer attention. Intelligence reports indicated that the enemy was already modifying their forces to counter human tactical methods. Colonel Foster organized the evacuation of rescued civilians while thinking about lessons learned from their first real combat against the Devourers. Human methods had worked, but success had come at the cost of revealing their capabilities to an enemy that learned from every mistake. "We saved millions of lives today," Nina told Jake as they watched refugee transports depart for safer worlds. "But we also showed our hand to an enemy that will not underestimate us again." Jake nodded grimly as he studied intelligence reports about Devourer fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The enemy was already adapting their strategies and preparing for future encounters with human protectors. The real war was just beginning. Corthran approached Jake with news from Vorthak Command. The journey to Arcturus Prime took 3 weeks aboard a Council transport ship. Jake Harrison watched alien crew members work with technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. The ship moved faster than anything Earth had ever built, but the aliens treated it like it was nothing special. Colonel Nina Foster arrived at the transport just before departure. She brought 50 of Earth's best soldiers with her, including Sergeant Alex Carter, who had never lost a fight in his entire career. Nina was tough and smart, and Jake was glad to have her as his second-in-command. The Council sent detailed information about what we can expect, Nina told Jake as they traveled through hyperspace. The trials will test everything we know about combat strategy and loyalty. Many alien species have failed these tests. Dr. Lisa Monroe spent most of the journey working with Nexari scientists who had joined their transport. The Nexari looked like tall humans but with blue skin and large eyes that glowed softly in the dark. They were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and logical thinking. The Devourers are unlike anything we have encountered before, Dr. Kellen explained to Lisa in his precise voice. They do not just destroy civilizations, they absorb them completely. Their ships contain technology from dozens of conquered species. Lisa studied the data that Dr. Kellen shared with her. The enemy seemed to take the best parts of each civilization they destroyed and add those strengths to their own forces. It was like they were building the perfect war machine from the pieces of their victims. When they finally reached Arcturus Prime, Jake was amazed by the size of the military complex. The station was larger than Earth's moon and contained training facilities for thousands of alien warriors. Ships from across the galaxy docked at massive ports that could handle vessels of any size. Captain Ryan Blake led the first group of humans off the transport. He immediately noticed that other aliens were watching them with suspicion and hostility. Tall reptilian Vorthak warriors stared at the humans like they were examining dangerous animals. "Welcome to Arcturus Prime humans," General Korthak said, in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "I am your training commander. You will learn quickly or you will fail quickly. We do not waste time on the weak." The Vorthak were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. They stood nearly 8 feet tall and their scales could stop most weapons. Their culture was built around honor and combat, and they had served as protectors for over 300 years. The first trial began immediately. Jake's team was divided into small groups and sent to different training areas. Each test was designed to push humans beyond their limits and prove they were not worthy of joining the elite Protector Corps. Sergeant Alex Carter found himself facing 3 Vorthak warriors in single combat. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but Alex used speed and tactics they had never seen before. He rolled between their legs and struck at weak points in their armor that no honorable warrior would ever target. "You fight like a coward," one Vorthak growled after Alex defeated him using moves that seemed impossible. "I fight to win," Alex replied calmly. "That is what matters when the galaxy is in danger." Meanwhile, Captain Blake was leading his squad through a complex maze filled with deadly traps and enemy positions. The scenario was designed to be impossible to complete, but Blake ignored the rules and found his own solution. Instead of following the planned route, Blake ordered his men to blast through walls and create their own path. The Vorthak observers were outraged by this approach, but they could not deny that it worked perfectly. Dr. Monroe worked alongside Nexari engineers to analyze captured Devourer technology. The alien scientists followed careful procedures and logical methods, but Lisa approached the problem differently. She touched things she was not supposed to touch and asked questions that made no sense to the logical Nexari minds. "Dr. Monroe, you cannot simply ignore safety protocols," Dr. Kellen warned as Lisa examined a piece of dark metal that seemed to absorb light around it. "Sometimes you have to take risks to learn something new," Lisa replied. "This material is not just metal, it is something else entirely. Look at how it responds to quantum fluctuations." Her unorthodox approach led to discoveries that the Nexari had missed completely. The Devourer technology was not just advanced, it was partially alive and could adapt to whatever was used against it. Colonel Foster faced the most difficult trial of all. She was placed in command of mixed alien forces and given an impossible defensive scenario. 3 enemy fleets were attacking a civilian evacuation zone, and she had limited resources to stop them. The traditional protector strategy would be to form defensive lines and fight with honor until reinforcement arrived. Nina ignored tradition completely and ordered her forces to scatter and attack in small groups using hit-and-run tactics. "This is not how protectors fight." Commander Vorthak protested. "You bring shame to the Corps with these coward tactics." "I brought victory," Nina replied firmly. "The civilians are safe, and that is all that matters." The trials continued for 2 weeks, and many of the alien observers grew more frustrated with human methods each day. The humans broke rules that had existed for centuries, and won battles that should have been impossible to win. Young Vorthak warrior, Corthrin watched Captain Blake's squad complete another impossible mission, using tactics that made no sense according to military doctrine. Blake had saved his squad by doing exactly what the enemy would not expect. "Your methods are strange but effective," Corthrin admitted to Blake after the exercise ended. "Perhaps we have been too rigid in our thinking." This friendship between Blake and Corthrin became important when political opponents tried to sabotage the human trials. Several council members still opposed human membership in the Protector Corps, and they arranged for accidents to happen during training. Blake's squad was sent on what should have been a routine patrol exercise, but they walked into an ambush that was far too well planned to be part of the test. Real weapons were being used, and real aliens were trying to kill them. "This is not a drill," Blake shouted to his men as energy blasts lit up the training facility around them. "Someone wants us dead." Corthrin arrived with his own warriors just in time to help Blake's squad fight off the attackers. The young Vorthak had begun to question his people's rigid honor codes after watching human adaptability in action. "Why did you help us?" Blake asked after the battle ended. "Because you are right about fighting to win instead of fighting for honor," Corthrin replied. "The galaxy needs warriors who can adapt, not warriors who follow ancient rules." The sabotage attempt backfired completely. Instead of proving that humans were dangerous and untrustworthy, it showed that they could inspire positive changes in other species. Even some Vorthak began to see value in human methods. Dr. Monroe made her most important discovery during the final week of trials. While analyzing Devourer technology, she realized that the enemy adapted by learning from predictable patterns in their opponent's thinking. Logical strategies and honor-based tactics became weaknesses because they could be anticipated. The Devourers study how different species think and then counter those thought patterns. Lisa explained to Jake during a private meeting. Traditional protector methods are actually helping the enemy because they are so predictable. Jake understood immediately why the Council had invited humanity to join the Protectors. Human unpredictability was not a weakness, it was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The trials ended with a formal ceremony where General Korthak announced the results. Many council members expected the humans to fail, but every single test had been passed using methods that no other species had ever attempted. The humans have proven themselves worthy of joining the Protector Corp, General Korthak declared. Their methods are unconventional, but they achieve victory when traditional approaches fail. Not everyone was happy with this decision. Several alien delegations protested loudly and demanded that the humans be rejected anyway. Political tensions within the council reached dangerous levels as news of human success spread. But there was no time for lengthy debates. Reports arrived that 3 more star systems had fallen to the Devourers while the trials were taking place. Millions of lives had been lost, and the enemy was moving closer to Council core worlds every day. The new human protectors will be deployed immediately, Ambassador Zethvar announced. They must prove themselves in real combat against the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced. Jake looked at his team and saw determination in every face. They had passed the trials, but the real test was just beginning. Commander Jake Harrison stood at the main window of Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, but Jake knew better. 3 wars had ended in the last 10 years, and humanity was finally learning to work together. His coffee had gone cold again while he read reports from the outer colonies. The communication alert made him jump. Red lights flashed across every screen in the command center. Jake had never seen anything like it before. The signal came from deep space, but it was not human. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez ran to his station and started working on the transmission. "Sir, this is coming from the Galactic Council," Sam said with wide eyes. "They want to talk to us directly." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Council had ignored humanity for over 50 years. They said humans were too violent and unpredictable to join their group of civilized species. Earth had tried many times to open talks, but the aliens always refused. Dr. Lisa Monroe hurried into the command center. She was the best alien expert they had, and Jake trusted her judgment completely. Lisa looked at the data streaming across the screens and shook her head in disbelief. "Jake, this is impossible," she said. "The Council never changes their mind about anything. They have rules that go back thousands of years." The transmission finally cleared and a strange voice filled the room. It spoke perfect English, but the tone was unlike anything human. Jake listened carefully as the alien explained why they were calling. "Humans of Earth, we are Ambassador Zethvar of the Galactic Council. We have watched your species for many cycles, and now we must speak. A great danger threatens all life in this galaxy. Our traditional defenders have failed against this new enemy. We need warriors who think differently than we do." Jake looked at his crew. Everyone was staring at the speakers like they could not believe what they were hearing. The ambassador continued with words that would change everything for humanity. "We invite your species to join the Protector Corps. This is the greatest honor we can give. Only the strongest and wisest races have ever been chosen. You must send representatives to meet us at the coordinates we are transmitting now." The signal ended and the command center fell silent. Jake knew this moment would be remembered forever. Humanity had just been asked to join the most elite military force in the galaxy. "Lisa, what do you think?" Jake asked. "Is this real or some kind of trick?" Lisa studied the transmission data for several minutes. Her face grew more surprised with each passing second. She finally looked up at Jake with amazement in her eyes. "The technology in this message is beyond anything we have seen before. It contains elements from at least 6 different alien civilizations. This has to be genuine, Jake. The Council really wants us." Captain Ryan Blake entered the command center at that moment. He was Jake's best friend and the leader of their special operations team. Ryan had heard the transmission from his ship and came as fast as he could. "Jake, tell me you are not thinking about accepting this," Ryan said. "We know nothing about these protectors or what they really want from us." Jake understood Ryan's concerns, but he also knew they could not refuse this chance. Humanity had been trying to prove themselves to the galaxy for decades. This might be their only opportunity to show what they could do. "We have to go, Ryan," Jake said. "If we refuse, they might think we are cowards or worse. Besides, we need to know more about this threat they mentioned." Dr. Monroe pulled up star charts on the main screen. The coordinates the Council had sent were in the Kepler system about 2 weeks' travel from Earth. It was far from any human colonies, but not impossible to reach. "I recommend we send a small team first," Lisa said. "Just enough people to show we take this seriously, but not so many that we look aggressive." Jake nodded and started planning the mission. He would take the UES Defiance with a crew of 30 volunteers. Ryan would lead a squad of Marines and Lisa would come as their science officer. Major Kate Sullivan would stay at Luna Station to coordinate with Earth Command. The next few days passed quickly as they prepared for departure. Earth's leaders were divided about the mission. Some thought it was too dangerous, while others saw it as humanity's greatest opportunity. In the end, they decided to trust Jake's judgment. The Defiance launched on a Tuesday morning with little ceremony. Jake did not want to attract too much attention in case something went wrong. As they left Earth's orbit, he looked back at his home planet and wondered if he would ever see it again. The journey to Kepler took exactly 14 days. During that time, Jake's team studied everything they could find about the Galactic Council and the Protector Corps. The information was limited, but what they learned was impressive. The Protectors were legendary warriors who had kept peace in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. When they finally reached the meeting point, Jake was amazed by what he saw. A massive alien space station hung in the darkness between the stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Ships from dozens of different species surrounded the station like guards. Ambassador Zethvar met them in person when they docked. The alien was tall and thin with silver skin that seemed to glow in the light. His eyes were completely black, but somehow Jake could tell he was friendly. "Welcome, humans," Zethvar said in his strange voice. "You have made a wise choice by coming here. Now we must discuss the great darkness that threatens us all." The ambassador led them to a conference room where holographic displays showed star maps of the entire galaxy. Jake saw red marks spreading across whole sectors like a disease. Entire solar systems had gone dark and no one knew why. "We call them the Devourers," Zethvar explained. "They appeared from the empty space between galaxies and consume everything in their path. Our greatest warriors have fought them many times but always fail. They adapt to our strategies too quickly." Jake studied the battle reports that Zethvar shared with them. The enemy seemed to learn from every encounter and become stronger each time. Traditional military tactics were useless against them. Why do you think humans can succeed where others have failed? Jake asked. Zethvar's black eyes seemed to sparkle with something like hope. Your species thinks in ways that make no sense to us or to our enemies. This chaos in your minds might be exactly what we need to confuse the Devourers. Jake looked at Ryan and Lisa. They both nodded slightly to show they agreed with his decision. This was bigger than just humanity now. The entire galaxy needed their help. We accept your invitation, Ambassador, Jake said firmly. Humanity will join the Protector Corps.